Hello, everybody, and welcome back to what are we doing today? We're doing First Ring Daily with me and
We're
a
back
nice.
to this thing.
I'm in a nice, quiet studio, and Paul might be still in a construction zone after he lied to us yesterday and said that would be the loudest day.
I swear to God. So we're in a bit of good timing here because the guy actually just left to go get more of whatever thing he needs, probably more noise or something. He's drilling in my kitchen, right? Because we're getting the backsplash finally. So the first thing he has to do is fix all of the craziness with the holes in the walls and everything. And anyway, it's really loud. And so I pinged you and I was like, dude, you got to listen to how crazy loud this is. And then he comes in and he goes, hey, just so you know, it's going to get really loud tomorrow when I bring in my wet saw into your garage and have to actually cut the tile. And I was like, it's going to get louder than this?
Yeah. But before things get worse in Paul's household, today's show is brought to you by Smart Deploy, Windows migrations, new hardware rollout, re-imaging, lab or computer refreshes. Complete your project in half the time. Do it a lot faster. They really can. Smartdeploy.com/Thurrott for a free 15 licenses forever and 1 year of support. Go check them out. That's smartdeploy.com/Thurrott. And speaking of Thurrott, he was not joking when he called me and quite literally just held the microphone up so I could hear how loud it was and then hung up.
Yeah, it was crazy loud.
Yeah. I appreciate you sharing how awful your life is right now, Paul.
It's the kind of sound where like it ends, but you can still hear it in your head. It's like when a truck backs up and you can, and the truck is gone. It's gone, but for some reason you're sitting there and you can just hear it, beep, 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 you know, that kind of thing.
Well, when they change the voices and they tell you to play in traffic, make sure to send me your Xbox One X first and then go jump in front of that school bus.
Listen, I'm just going to send you all my passwords and give you a key to the house so you can just come and take whatever you want. I think this is just an open understanding that if I meet my end poorly, my wife will see you at the door and know why you're there, and it will be fun.
I have come for the things.
Yep. The legacy must continue.
Yes. Just let me know when the construction's done because I don't want to have that same thing as you.
Yeah.
I wanted to give a quick update here, Paul. I'll be very curious to see if you noticed this or looked into it. Actually, you may not unless you're paying close attention. So I was using the Quantum browser yesterday, or Firefox Quantum, that came out. And so I was curious. I compared it to Edge and I compared it to Chrome, and then obviously you compared it to Quantum. And it uses, pardon my French here, an assload amount of CPU, but not a lot of RAM.
That's funny.
Yeah. I don't know why. Basically, my test consisted of I opened up TweetDeck, which TweetDeck is probably by far the hardest way to hit a browser, at least anything that I do on a consistent basis, and put all three browsers next to each other. And while it was using less RAM, which is good, it was compensating for that by using almost 25% CPU fairly consistently. And at that, I'd much rather just have it Chrome gobble of RAM rather than count down the CPU cycles.
Okay, I haven't even considered that aspect of this product. I will look at that.
Yeah, I'll be curious to see if anybody else, if it was just kind of like a one-off, but it was running pretty hard. So if you are running it,
it has kind of a minimalist look to it that I like. It doesn't look exactly like Edge because it's kind of more contrasty looking or whatever, but it has that kind of style to it. And the way that it renders text is very reminiscent of Edge, which I like quite a bit.
It's a good browser. I have the scrolling is great. I mean, I would have kept with it all of yesterday, but then I realized how much CPU usage it was using while I was trying to render some video, and I was like, hey, wait a minute. That's not good. I also wonder if that has any impact on battery life, too.
Yeah, right. I don't know how I could possibly test that, but that's a good point. Yeah, I'm going to keep looking at it. It's interesting.
Before we get to We Help Wednesday here, Paul, you have a long-term update, kind of, but not really.
Yeah, back in May, Microsoft announced a little product called Surface Laptop, And back in June, Microsoft released that product into the world, and I never got one for review, which has always bothered me. So Mary Jo let me borrow hers while we were in Harlem, and it was not enough time to give it an actual review, but I did write a first impressions and a few other articles about it at that time. Anyway, Microsoft has finally sent me one to review, so I'm going to do that, and I would have posted that article already, but I will do so right after we finish this recording, so it will be up by the time you see this podcast. But they asked me what color I wanted, which was kind of cool. So I got the get the exact name of this, but it's a gold color, which is kind of subtle.
Really?
I don't really tell, because I like gold. Yep.
You remember yesterday how you said you couldn't think that I could buy anything more embarrassing than AirPods and all that?
Well, okay, but I mean, consider this is the iPhone you were making fun of, which it's in a kind of a see-through case. It's kind of hard to tell in the video, but it's gold. It's not objectionable. But this is this color it's kind of more professional looking. I think it's cool.
So you had the beautiful options of burgundy. I thought you were going to say maybe you got the cobalt, because the cobalt is also nice. I'm a big fan of the burgundy. And you went with none of the above. You went with the Midas touch of gold.
Yep, I did. And I'm okay with it.
Can you please explain to the viewers at home, what color are you paying a lot of people to remove from your house?
It's good, Brad. You really brought that together. Gold, but
Thank
that's
you.
like gold. Okay, but gold fittings, if you think about faucets and showers and towel holders and things, there's a weird combination of silver and gold, which probably seemed like a luxury thing back in 1981 or whenever they put that in. But yes, that's true. I've spent thousands of dollars to extract fake gold from my house. It's true.
Only to tell Microsoft to send you more fake gold.
Well, this is nice gold. This looks like brass. If my fittings look like that, I'd leave them alone.
It's okay, Paul. I will note this down that you are dumb, and we will move on.
Alrighty.
All right, we're going to dive in here to We Help Wednesday, everybody. A handful of questions, as always, appreciated. You can find those questions at thurrott.com/forums. There's always a thread up roughly on Tuesday. We'll say We Help Wednesday, and then the date the show goes live. And so Steve Layton actually calling out a question about the date. He says, could you please cater to the international community and write the date in the correct format? Clearly the title should read We-Help Wednesday 15/11. And no, I will absolutely not, because we work in freedom units and there is no month of 15.
Amazing. Right. We don't use the metric date system, buddy.
Yeah. Neil Armstrong, rest in peace, who actually lived very close to me, got to the moon using our calendar, and until somebody gets to Mars using the other types of calendar, I'm going to stick.
That's what we're reduced to, using a 40-year-old example of why America is great.
We're holding on to that.
Yeah, we sure are.
Luke says, will Paul once again be creating a terrorist hostage-style room for his shooting of First Ring Daily? Yes, Paul. Where are we in this?
So we have a weekly call, and that's something I was going to talk to you guys about on that call. But the plan has been for me to redo a studio. In fact, I have kind of a cool idea for it. I have boxes of old Byte magazines, and I got lots of tchotchke type things. You can't really see them right now because of the way the video is. But I got those things up on my, whatever that's called, behind me. Banister. What's the term for that, man?
Mantle?
That thing above the fireplace, mantle. But yeah, that's been the thing. So it's just a matter of paying for it, which has been the issue. So we've been kind of hitting the high value stuff first here at the house. But yeah, it's on the list. I was wondering though that now that we've moved this thing to non-premium, maybe a formal podcast studio is not required, or maybe it doesn't have to be exactly like it was before. So I was going to discuss that with you guys privately, but now I have to air it publicly.
The only thing I am going to change on my end is I think somebody just knocked on my door. I'm assuming that's not FedEx or UPS because they never do such things. I think I am going to buy a wired mic because the wireless mic works and it's great, but anybody who's listening to the audio of this will know that you sound much better than I do, and that's just not right.
Yeah, I mean, there you go. That's one thing. We had this idea when we moved in. We have extra bedrooms here because this house is too big for us, and I was thinking about turning one into like a product room, kind of like where I would just put like a couch and a table and have a couple of things on the table, and I could use it to take photographs of products and maybe do the podcast from there. But I was thinking it might be kind of cool to have it be like a different setup, than it was before. So
maybe
we'll figure it out.
Paint the walls gold.
Yeah, I'll use all the gold fittings and then put them at random spots on the wall. It'll be like one of those climbing walls.
Yeah. Next question comes from I Love Missy85. He says, I was wondering if it's possible to use an external hard drive on a Windows 10 laptop to download games and on a Steam subscription service instead of using an internal hard drive with a laptop because I'm running out of space. Thanks for your help. Yes, I believe you can. Actually, somebody responded to it and said, here you go, here's how to do it. The one thing you need to keep in mind is that make sure to check the connection of your laptop because it's going to be probably the bottleneck of your performance for running those games on an external drive. So definitely recommend a USB 3.1 connection or faster if possible.
Yep.
Next question comes from Clark B. It says, Paul, I'm guessing you were running Oreo on your Pixel 2 XL and also the Microsoft Launcher. If so, are you able to successfully add a web page to the home screen?
So I'm actually not running the Microsoft Launcher because I was in the process of reviewing this device and I wanted to leave it, the way it came. Since that has concluded, I'm actually going to go back to do something that I had started on, which was looking at the Microsoft stuff on here. So I have not done that on the new phone. It's funny. I had to send back the other phone because it's worth $400, and I need that to afford this. But I also need like a second phone so I can do more testing because in many cases, what I really want to do is, have two configurations so I can kind of see what the differences are. Like I'd like to put Android 8.1 on here, which I can do. I did have that on my previous Pixel, but I haven't done anything like that yet because I'm trying to review what this thing is. So anyway, I don't know on that yet. Sorry, but I will do so soon.
Yeah. I had something in my head and I totally forgot what it was.
Is it a dog telling you to kill?
No.
No. Okay.
Next question comes from Moogle Assassin, and he says, "Hey, where the heck are all these Surface Book 2 reviews?" Officially, I don't ever know what we're allowed to say. Just no comment. They are coming at some point, and that's probably about that.
Yep.
Harm Jr. says, I almost never buy new just released technology or this year's model. I am too cheap, and usually all the bugs are worked out by a year or two. Not a bad strategy, to be honest. I always go for last year's model. If you had to choose a new phone with that as your criteria, what would your recommendations be? So he's essentially looking for a phone from last year.
Right. Okay. And he didn't specify Android, iPhone, whatever?
Right.
Yeah, I mean, that makes it kind of tough. Well,
I'll go first.
Yeah, I mean, it's tough. Like the Pixel I had was okay. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Oh, I was going to say that I use the iPhone 7 every day. I keep looking, and there actually is an iPhone X available today at my local store. 250 gets 6 gigs of storage, but I'm not going to buy it. But the
I cannot
iPhone
believe
7
you're not doing this. I cannot believe it.
I know.
The iPhone 7 is tough for me because I had the Plus, and that was the first time in my experience that the new device wasn't as good as the old, and that made that difficult. I think the 7, the one you have, the non-Plus version, is probably the better phone, honestly, and that might not be a bad choice. In fact, you couldn't go too bad if you went even with the 6S at this point, which is 2 years old. And if you could handle a smaller phone, the new version of the SE that came out earlier in the year is also very nice if you can handle, like a tiny screen. On the Android side, it's tough because the Note 7 came out toward the end of the year and then exploded. And the The previous phone to that, which would have been the S7, is fine, but now we see these really nice bezel-less, S8, S8 Plus, Note 8 type phones, and it's like going back to a device like that is kind of strange. But great camera is probably fine. I can't explain this, and I know other people disagree with it, but the Pixel XL for me, the original Pixel XL, had a performance creep issue that never went away. Every time I blew the thing away, and it would just keep coming back. And of course, the version I had only had 32 gigs of storage, which I don't think is enough, and it's not expandable. So it's kind of winnowing the field here a little bit. I mean, I'm not sure what to say. I've always had good results with Moto phones, but the previous Motorola phone I have a Z2 Force now, was an X, a Moto X, that was also about 2 years ago. That was a great phone, but that used to be the flagship, and they replaced it with the first generation Z devices, except those Moto mods, which are very interesting phones. I don't have any experience with the first gen versions. I know there was like a Force, which was kind of the bigger, better performance one, and then I think a Play, which was probably thinner, lighter. I don't remember the exact breakdown of the lineup, but I guess in general, I would always recommend looking at the Moto phones because they just offer a range of choices, and they're all usually pretty good. OnePlus 3T, maybe?
Yeah.
The OnePlus 5 is about to be replaced, right, with a 5T. That might qualify, even though it came out earlier this year. That will probably be offered at a reduced cost pretty soon.
Yeah, a lot of options.
Yeah.
A lot of good options, to be honest. Next question comes from Anchovy Lover. He says, hey, we now have Amazon in Australia, and he just grabbed 6 months of Prime. What shows are worth checking out? As somebody recommended, Man in the High Castle. I also highly recommend, if you are a fan of cars and humor, the Grand Tour is also on Amazon Prime. That is worth watching.
Yeah, I don't know if they have like Hulu and Netflix, but in Australia, but those services have amazing shows. I was just commenting to my wife last night. We finished watching something that I think was called Mindhunter, and which is a fictionalized account of the first FBI profilers, John Douglas and those guys. And we just started watching a very similar show that was a series about it might be called like Manhunter. It's almost exactly the same name, but it's about the Ted Kaczynski Unabomber case. And I mean, I don't know. There's so much good stuff. Like, it's kind of amazing. Yeah. Like, you could, instead of cord cutting, it's like, just don't have TV at all. Just watch shows that way. There's a lot of good choices there.
Simard57, he says, hey, I just moved to the Android Moto Z2. How do I pin Outlook Calendar to the home screen? Actually, Spartan fan actually chimed in. He said there's a widget called Outlook Agenda that may work. He also says he likes the 9 calendar widget, though, and would also recommend it.
So the issue, in case it's not clear to people, is Outlook is unusual in the mobile space because it has a bunch of stuff in it that are unrelated things, like your calendar, your email, your contacts, and then also like online storage and some other services. A typical calendar app like Google Calendar would provide a widget for just the calendar. And if you go into widgets, I'm guessing you're not seeing one for Outlook Calendar, which there should be one. But the advice here is something that you might run into, Brad, on the iPhone. You have, let's say your contacts were in Gmail, but you want when you get a phone call, you want the phone to tell you it's Paul or whatever, right? And even though that contact is in Gmail and you're not necessarily using the built-in mail app. And so you can configure your accounts in different places to make those things happen, right? So even if you want to use Microsoft Outlook for calendar, you could still configure your account in, Gmail or some other app, and then use the widget for that app. Granted, it would open in that app, but I mean, if you can kind of mix and match like that. I mean, there's I don't know how it works on that Google Assistant screen you get when you swipe off the home screen, but you get like your kind of daily update and all that stuff. It's possible just to configure your accounts in different places and use them for different reasons. I do that on Windows 10. Like, I'll configure my accounts, but I don't want my calendars from my secondary accounts appearing in the calendar app on Windows 10. And so I just uncheck that stuff.
I was actually looking for something here. I'm going to paste the link into the response to this guy. R. Todd US says, I'm looking to get into the smart home trend. Is there anything you would recommend regarding the security of these IoT devices? I've read that these devices present a security concern, which they do. Also, any devices you would recommend as a must-have? So here's a couple things. I know Paul has his adventures, but you can chime in a second. You need to kind of figure out, do you want to be a Google house or do you want to be an Amazon house? You can mix and match, but I would kind of go either way. I went with Amazon. I think Paul is more Google. And so then you can kind of build things out from there and then make sure your devices work with those two platforms. Although I can tell you right now, any major brand of IoT device is going to probably work with either one of those or Apple's HomeKit. But in my opinion, as of right now, Amazon's a little bit better probably than Apple. And then I'm going to paste in a link response where basically I wrote up earlier this year everything that I've done and how it all works out. But as for essential things, if I was going to go back and buy the very first thing again, I think an internet-connected home thermostat is where probably the like most essential.
Yep.
Because there's nothing greater than being able to lay on your couch and turn the heat up without getting up.
Yeah, I mean, we've only dabbled in the smart home stuff so far, and we started off mostly with lighting. I'm a little squeamish about doing security stuff. We've looked at the Ring stuff, obviously, and there's some other brands that are kind of big in that area. I am not going to put cameras around my house, for example. I could picture and am actually sort of semi-planning on doing something around motion detection, but not for security purposes, more for lighting purposes, right? Which is, implicitly security, but I don't know. We looked very briefly at doing a door security system. My wife thought it'd be kind of cool if we could have like enter a number to get in, and those aren't even necessarily smart home type things. They're just kind of interim devices. But I mean, I don't know. One thing too. I'm sorry, I'm babbling here, but we do home swaps every year, right? And one thing I would hate for someone to come into my home and find a camera sitting somewhere and be like, oh my God, he's watching us from Europe or something, which I could do, with those kinds of devices. I'm not going to do that. And I just don't like that. I just don't like that kind of thing personally either. So.
Yeah, my parents have some cameras in their house, but they're all exterior and they're all basically focused on doors. Actually, specifically, they have one focused at the front door so that when Amazon packages get dropped off, then if anybody steals them, they at least have whatever. But I couldn't imagine putting an interior camera as I look around my office, and there's probably 19 cameras in this office. But to your point, exactly. Security cameras pointing like just in your kitchen or something like that.
Yeah, exterior cameras, that might be the best place to start. But the obvious thing, I guess, is door locks, right? I mean, you could do that kind of thing. You just want to make sure you have a mechanical solution as well as an electronic one, obviously.
In the other type of security, which people are probably wondering about too, is just getting hacked from that perspective.
Right. That was his question.
Yeah. One thing you can do is set up another internal network on your router. Most routers support multiple networks, and you can put all your IoT devices on that network. So that way, if one of them is compromised, it is artificially separated from the rest of your network. So.
Yeah, I haven't accepted this yet, but I was just talking to a company about an IoT security thing that's happening at CES, which I know we're both very excited to think about and/or book. So that might be something that we'll be able to discuss more in the future. But that's, obviously, the hackability of everything, I mean, is a problem.
Yep.
Of course.
And then the last question comes from Spartan Fan. He says, any updates on Alexa or multiple account supports coming to the Invoke?
Nope. I will say this: if the concern here is you don't want to spend $100 or $200 on an Invoke and be sort of orphaned with Cortana, it's going to be a long time, I think, before the Alexa Cortana integration is elegant. If you go back and look at what Amazon and Microsoft wrote about this a couple months ago, the initial release, as they described it, is very strange. It's almost like a handoff. It's not a seamless thing. I'm sure the goal is to get it to be more seamless in the future. And it's not hard to look at a device like the Invoke and think, this could be running anything, and these are cloud services. Why can't they just talk to each other on the back end? They will, but I wouldn't base that decision now on that. If you're really that worried about it, Amazon has an incredible selection of Echoes that are at every price point. You'd be better off just getting one of those, I think.
I agree, because you can get them very cheap typically on Black Friday,
and they've gotten really nice.
Yeah. Yep. So you got anything else for today, Paul, before we shut her down?
No, I've actually written a couple of articles I haven't posted yet, so I'll get those up. One is that it's actually called Second Impressions, because I wrote my first impressions 6 months ago. But I have an editorial about Apple and some other stuff. So it's like 11 o'clock, 11:30, and I haven't posted anything to my site. That's very unusual. So I'm going to try to fix that problem.
As a very random aside, Paul, I am pretty sure that I have the exact same doors on my fireplace that you do.
Nice. We just watched a House Hunters show that had the exact same brick and mantle, I guess it's called. It was this literal fireplace, like in someone else's house.
Yeah, I'm almost positive we have those exact same doors.
That's funny.
Yeah. So there you go. Did that change it? Nope. There we go. Today's show is brought to you by Smart Deploy, hardware-independent imaging software for businesses with 50 to 50,000 users. And we'll be back here tomorrow, First Ring Daily. Thanks for tuning in, everybody. Catch you next time.